even recently, when I was in Edmonton, somebody was doing a major window retrofit on a acreage house, and they said quite explicitly they did the research, and when they realized, wait a minute, this is made in Winnipeg, where there's extreme hot and cold, they must make good windows. So rock and roll.
Rock and roll. I'm here with Al Dueck from Duxton. Al, I'll give you a little bit of time here just to briefly introduce yourself, talk a little bit about Duxton Windows, and maybe just share what you do and where you're located for the people who aren't familiar with your company.
Okay, thank you very much, Josh, for this opportunity. Yeah, it's kind of interesting how life turns out because I was just saying earlier today, and I've said many times, uh, as I had graduated from university in the MBA and got into manufacturing very early on with versatile farm equipment, I ended up staying there for the rest of my career, even though in the MBA school it was, oh, you got to go to Bay Street or Wall Street, or because that's just manufacturing, as even now our world seems to think is belongs in China or some other places, even though not every job is serving coffee. But nonetheless, I ended up being going down that road, first with versatile farm equipment for 6 years, and a time that I value to this day because it was really cool learning more about connecting innovative products like the bidirectional tractor to unique and innovative ways of taking the locally designed and made product. And but they went through a tough patch, and 6 years later, I ended up going over to a locally owned window manufacturing business called Wilmar Windows, and I was there for 13 years, remarkable years, where we were really creative. I feel like from my perspective, I took some of that experience from Versatile into Wilmar, and we kept pushing the envelope over there with performance products and really neat things like copper-clad wood windows and higher
That's cool.
performance glass. Yeah, so it was a great experience that way, and different types of materials. But at some point in time, unfortunately, the window company was sold to a U.S. business, and me being thoroughly Canadian, I just really felt as if I needed to have a new direction. And luckily, my wife was crazy enough to allow me to dive off. And even though I was 45 at that point in time, I thought that ship has sailed. But it was turned out to be the right time. And I think for a lot of young entrepreneurs, that is a fact of life that's worth considering. Maybe the odd person at 19 or 21 starts a incredibly successful software industry. Not very many do. As they say, 80% of businesses fail within the first 2 years or something. So it's kind of one of those things that if I was teaching a course about entrepreneurship and stuff, part of it would be to say to people, hey, this is not necessarily something you have to, suddenly do. Maybe it's worth your while to have a bit of patience to where your maturity, connections, knowledge, experience builds up. So in my case, that was the case. And when we dove off in a new direction to start this window manufacturing business from scratch, there were some immediate decisions to make on where you're going with this, what's the best path, and what makes the most sense. And one of the crucial elements there was I had, again, because of past experience at 45, old 45, been exposed to vinyl windows, aluminum, wood, metal-clad wood, copper-clad wood, even pultruded fiberglass, a local invention. And so as we looked at where we wanted to go long term, why not go to something newer and more progressive and probably more successful long term, even though it was a tougher road to hoe.
Tougher
So
startup, tougher
yeah,
setup or
exactly.
whatever.
Not as well known.
Okay.
But fortunately, I think in the long term, here we are 25 years later, and that concept of taking on the harder road with the better future was the right decision. And of course, my wife, the smart one, is the one that takes credit for
The brains behind it
that.
all. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Well, you stole my joke. I was gonna say you keep talking about you started this company at 45, so that's what 5 years ago now.
Yeah.
But you said 25 years. That's a long time you've been here in Winnipeg.
Correct.
I didn't realize that pultrusion was a local Winnipeg idea.
Absolutely. No, there was, and it's kind of an interesting story in many ways because the window and door industry has gone through a variety of evolution, I would say, and up till, pick a number, 30, 35 years ago, whether it was wood or aluminum or in some cases even steel, those were kind of the materials that were material of choice for that. But for whatever sets of reasons, the Europeans, people like Reha from Germany, had taken the road of making vinyl windows, or UPVC as they would call it. And eventually, in the early 80s or so, it made its way over here, and somewhere in something like the mid 80s, late 80s, people building new homes, the whole business of trying to obtain something low maintenance and more durable in one context, but mostly about the no maintenance. It was taken from a very heavy European style of product, quite expensive, and through a version of value engineering, it was brought into more of the mainstream. And so hence, by the time 99, 2000 was around, it had become mainstream in all of that stuff, whether it was window replacement or new construction, only to find out subsequently in many cases that some of those, especially the cheapest vinyl windows, didn't last very long. Anyways, in the meantime, there was another bit of experience going on with an aluminum business where they were finding that the cost of aluminum was going up and down, and some people were being more interested in, wait a minute, how do I find a material that doesn't have quite that impact from changes in the cost of the material that goes into it. And so there was actually a stepbrother team in Winnipeg. One was in the aluminum business. It used to be called Acrodor, it doesn't exist anymore. And his stepbrother, who was in the pultrusion business, which is really taking strands of glass, literally about 65% of it, through a die that's maybe 40 inches long, 400 degrees hot, plus or minus. And he was pultruding for other applications. Actually, the joke is they were doing it partly for hog farms because pigs don't like biting onto this stuff if it hurts their yeah, and hurts their poor little lips. So there was this conversation between them, and they decided to the owner of this pultrusion business, Omniglass, which still exists now, was taken over by somebody else. He spent, he told me, I ran into the founder, and he spent many hours, days, weeks, I don't know, researching how could he make thin wall pultrusions that were light enough but strong enough to work for the window and door industry. And after X amount of time, he eventually figured out how to do that. This stepbrother started making some windows. They learned a few other hard lessons in the process, but at the end of the day, they had success with it. Other people adopted it, and they started talking about the glass on glass difference, because if you take the characteristics of the glass you want to look through and you look at the fiberglass that surrounds it, they have very similar physical characteristics, and so hence they, especially as windows get bigger and bigger, it becomes more and more important for there to be sort of a compatibility between the window frames and these large pieces of glass.
Okay, so that kind of speaks to the durability, how they kind of react together to the environment.
Yeah. And not only that, but the fact that this material is a more robust type of material for, and partly by design. If you have lived in this world long enough, and as we did at Duxton, eventually we significantly revised, updated, created our own dies at considerable expense to a number of different window frame details that would be more appropriate, because a lot of our work was going into light commercial, whether that was high-rise towers or buildings where architects and building envelope engineers were looking for something that was more robust. That would, you know.
Well, and you have quite a catalog. Like that's one thing I enjoyed working with you and Connolly is picking out exactly the sill setback we want and the narrow, thin perimeters and all that stuff. I mean, you've clearly worked hard on a lot of those things. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the business climate in Winnipeg. You started local manufacturing here. You've been involved in a few other local manufacturing. I think you alluded to it a little earlier too, that a lot of manufacturing typically goes overseas. So what's it like being a manufacturer here in Winnipeg? What are the challenges? What are the opportunities?
So we're talking about Winnipeg, Canada. I think sometimes that our city in our province is undervalued that way in some ways because I don't think it's rocket science to look at some of the biggest and most expensive cities where lifestyle becomes very expensive, where you have to spend at least $1 million or something for a house, et cetera, and hence, yeah, exactly. And so all of a sudden, a great percentage of people in that environment, they have to be paid at a much higher rate. Whereas the cost of living in Winnipeg, I would say, is considerably less in many cases. And furthermore, if you are centrally located, as we are, if you're located in Winnipeg, where we know what cold is,
and you can test your products.
Our product is real world tested. There's some real advantages. But yeah, I would say that, from my experience, certainly, as long as you use some common sense and some drive and energy, Winnipeg can be a very successful place to be a manufacturing enterprise, creating great jobs, great value for a lot of people. And in our case, a lot of our people are recent Canadians. And so we work really hard at incorporating them into our team and making them feel like they're a valued part of the team.
Yeah, cool. No, that's cool. You talked a little bit too about how other cities like Vancouver and Toronto, that cost of living is way up higher. What would you say as far as, because you build a more energy efficient, more sustainable, more forward-looking kind of product, would you say, how has the Winnipeg market responded to or challenged that component of your product?
So I would say that, when one was to look at all these different window frame types, certainly jumping into what we call pulse-rooted fiberglass frames, they are somewhat more expensive straight up due to a manufacturing process, due to content, due to all those things. But having said that, some people I think are aware of this, but the environment that we live in, Winnipeg and Manitoba used to be known in the 70s and 80s, even more so, for a place that built some of the best homes in maybe the world or Canada or whatever, partly because we were in this extreme weather of minus 40 to plus 30 or 35. And so consequently, it had also been the place where some of the predecessors, supposedly Paramount Windows was one of the first places that invented triple pane glass, so that it was because of the cold. And anybody that knows what happens on edge condensation and frost knows all about that. But subsequent to that, or surrounding some of that, Manitoba companies such as Lowen Windows and Wilmar Windows had, in sequence actually, been Canada's largest by volume window manufacturers based in Manitoba, I should say. And I would say the people that were connected to that would have said that there was a few factors involved, but one of them was that because they were based here, unlike somebody who was making windows in Kansas or California, their window frames were bigger, they're heavier, they were designed to accommodate the weight of triple pane glass, etc. So even recently, when I was in Edmonton, somebody was doing a major window retrofit on a acreage house, and they said quite explicitly they did the research, and when they realized, wait a minute, this is made in Winnipeg where there's extreme hot and cold, they must make good windows. So
yeah, well, it's necessity drives a lot of innovation here.
Absolutely, yeah.
And you rub shoulders with the people you sell to, so you get a lot of feedback on that too.
Yeah.
You talked a little bit about how much more there's a cost up front. one of the things, and I think you're familiar too with Jim Nalstead from CFAR and some of the analytics he does with total cost of building ownership. How does that higher upfront cost actually, like, does that translate to a lower overall cost? What's the sell feature there for fiberglass? Obviously, larger window, larger glazing. What else?
Well, I do think that there are some very explicit points there, and I was thinking about that coming here. We have done, as I think I said, a lot of our work in light commercial, in condos, schools, high-rise buildings, etc. And not long ago, we encountered a building actually somewhere in Charleswood or somewhere in Winnipeg where this apartment or condo had installed these light green painted vinyl windows. They were 7 or 8 years old, and they were in poor enough condition that they were eagerly working to replace them. And I'm not saying they all behave like that. However, as I said before, the nature of these different materials, vinyl expands and contracts a great deal in heat and things like that. Vinyl is difficult sometimes, depending on what you're doing with it, to turn into the darker colors that are so popular. There's a variety of those things that come into play, and I would say our experience, research in some areas, UBC did some work on the life expectancy of vinyl windows versus fiberglass. Their projection, considering a variety of things, was 35% longer than. But having said that, there are people that talk about a 50-year life for fiberglass windows that are properly maintained. I mean, we all know it all depends. You can find wood windows in Winnipeg's Exchange District that is, what, 50, 60, 75 years old?
Yeah.
But in a lot of cases there, they were made from hardwoods. They were maintained much, much better. Maybe, so.
The houses breathe
differently. Yeah, no, quite different. You're absolutely right. So from that point of view, when somebody looks at, because recently I was doing another Lunch and Learn presentation and talking about checking the boxes, and one of those boxes was durability. And I don't know that people always consider this, but it isn't just the frame itself and all the details of that, but the insulating glass. If it's not well made, it can fail in less than 10 years. If it's really well made, it can last 20, 30 years. And fortunately, that is another choice that we make in using a Cardinal insulating glass product that comes with a 20-year limited warranty for residential purposes. And yeah, it comes with a warm edge. They have a long, long track record of actually having. So some of those choices of what we choose to do with fiberglass and the types of components that go into it, I think, much like maybe quite a few other more complex products, what you put into it or what you decide to do to create a higher level of value consists of those other pieces also.
Well, and that's, I mean, we see it from maybe the other end, but often customers ask us, what's the lowest maintenance thing I can put on for siding or for flooring or for... and so maintenance is becoming more of a consideration, especially when there are so many options out there for.
Well, in windows, replacing glass can be a complex and expensive proposition, and there are, I don't know, businesses out there. I again ran into this out in Alberta where somebody talked about, oh yeah, they're out there and they've got a lifetime warranty, and I don't know. I would just say that.
As long as you don't open the window.
Maybe, yeah. But even more than that. And actually, in those green vinyl windows I talked about that had 7 or 8 year problems, they supposedly had a lifetime warranty, but the people weren't returning phone calls. Oh. So it just might, from that point of view, you know, there is an element of trying to get to know who are you dealing with. The people that, as I said, in Edmonton had done considerable research on, wait a minute, what do I want to put in here? This is my forever home. This is, you know, a big... complicated project. Not only do I want to make sure that I'm putting an excellent product with a great reputation, well designed, but that the people doing the replacement work, which is huge in that case, in fact, sometimes people just say 50% of the problem is the product, 50% is the actual people doing the replacement work. So I think from that point of view, simply to say, oh, they've got a written lifetime warranty, that may or may not mean anything. It all depends. You really want to look at what is the real reputation, what is the integrity of what's there.
a lifetime warranty, if it's just a company's lifetime, isn't necessarily
No,
isn't
not
necessarily a
not
good
that
warranty.
great. No.
Well, and then I mean, you're talking about changing glass on these windows, and yeah, that's a pain in the butt. I can't imagine changing frames, like some of the brick build-in details, or even all the
Mhm.
siding around some of that. If you have to swap out your frame, that's a huge cost.
Yeah, I think I've had a variety of conversations with people in the last while where, you may have bought a home where, for argument's sake, a builder chose to put a lower cost vinyl window in, and now you're finding after you've had it for a limited period of time that it's not quite what you wanted it to be for a variety of reasons, that you may very well want to rethink it. Wait a minute, what am I going to put in here now? If at least if you're going to keep the home for an extended period of time.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and then I mean, you've talked too about how vinyl will shrink and expand differently than the glass, and so then now your nice big kitchen window is a breeze. It's letting the air in all winter
Uh-huh.
long, and so yeah, there's
No, and it's
frustration.
true. The testing that one does, for example, in lab tests, because we have both a system where we can do air water testing in the factory, as well as in our industry, we do have to go through a pretty rigorous testing program to verify air, water, structural, as well as to prove out the theoretical R values of the system in different types, etc. And in those cases, to actually understand what you're getting in nice, temperate, warm weather,
Huh.
as opposed to cold weather, is the shrinkage or different things, is the weather stripping really keeping it airtight even when it's minus 30 or 35, right? So
Yeah, and then 6 months later, it's plus 30, and
exactly.
yeah, yeah. That's rare that you get such a privilege as to be able to install windows in a climate like ours. Let's talk a little bit. So you talked about aluminum pricing early on. You talked about aluminum pricing being very volatile, going up and down. Um, that brings to mind a lot of recent trauma in all the industry with first the COVID and then the tariffs. How has Duxton weathered that storm? How has that been from your end?
Yeah, I was funny. I've had a few of these conversations recently that the business environment in the last from 08 forward, there's been quite a lot of turbulence in there, and not always been the perfect time to be building a business. But I think at the same time, if you tough it out, you learn a few lessons along the way. I know that there are a variety of people have talked about the fact that building costs have gone up quite a bit in during the COVID period for a variety of reasons. Some of that, there's only so and so much a person can do. There's elements of that cost increases that are there. You invest in automation to try, you train people, you do work on continuous improvement. Um, as far as the tariffs themselves, has it had a huge impact on us? No, fortunately not. There is definitely some components that are sourced basically internationally, whether they're made in China, they ship through U.S. channels or something like that. Some of that's pretty much impossible to escape completely, and but we do our very best to. And fortunately, I would say, again, the nature of the pultruded components are such that the volatility of cost isn't there to quite the same extent.
It's been a little more predictable, a
Yeah,
little more steady.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, this one is the one I'm always excited about. I like the forward-facing questions. What are you excited about in the future of windows, glazings, fiberglass? What are, in your world, in your
Yeah.
manufacturing world, what excites you about the future here?
So I do think that there is, what should I say, again, we were going through this business of checking the boxes of why would people, look at pultruded fiberglass. And I think it's pretty common accepted fact that there is ongoing pressure from environmental effects of trying to make the world more energy efficient. And whether you're a real environmentalist or a skeptic, like a certain person down south, um, a part of me still kind of says, hey, if you can be more efficient, maybe it's the Mennonite roots or something, then why wouldn't you be, right? But that aside, there has been definitely a push from that side, and it depends, I think, again, to some degree on if you're a Tesla or if you're an Apple or this or that or the other thing. If your corporate culture is forward leaning, you will probably go in that direction and pursue and come out the back end with more of those. And we have from the very beginning. As I said before, I was fortunate at Versatile to spend time on a more innovative product. I was fortunate to spend the same kinds of elements at Wilmar, where we created really high performance heat mirror products, which, like with an R19.5 center glass, things like that, which were
Wow.
quite exceptional at one point. And so now we are, have been virtually from the beginning, not just leaning into a more progressive material that's more durable, but in the last 10, 15 years, we have reinvented almost all of our product line in uh,
Wow.
creating new dies, adopting new features. Now with two products that have passive ratings, we've tapped into two other sealed unit or insulating glass configurations. One of them is vacuated glass that now is being made in the U.S., as well as a product called thin glass or Gorilla Glass, as you would know it from your smartphone.
Uh-huh.
So what they've done with that is they've chosen to try and use thinner glass in the middle in a triple or a quad, where the middle two would be, because residential glass typically is 3 or 4 mil thick, let's say, and as you go into commercial, it goes to 5 and 6 and rarely 8. But as you go to thicker glass in a triple, obviously your thickness gets bigger and you have less airspace or whatever you want to call it. So what these folks with thin glass or Gorilla Glass, as I said, do is this 1 mil glass instead of 3. You're
Holy.
eating less into that space, and there's more capability, especially people with very thin sash. They find that a way thereby to boost the performance of it because you have low E coatings and inert gases like argon or krypton. And so I would say in our case, we are a little less focused on just making the cheapest possible product and wanting, to have the ability to create uh, and tap into the more performance-oriented components to, deliver what people are going to be looking for on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, well, and that, I mean, the Gorilla Glass is lighter, it's more
Yeah.
insulating room, it's all
Mhm.
that wonderful stuff. Vacuum sealed glass, that sounds exciting. What's that?
So it has its roots, I think, really in Japan, believe it or not, and the driver of it. I went over there 3 times in my Wilmar era, so I got to know a little bit about it, not a whole bunch, but some of these countries, and as you can imagine, it's an island nation. It has housing technology that's, back a ways, and they have very thin sash. So part of the objective was, how do I upgrade that? And with vacuated glass, you're literally putting two pieces of glass together with a very skinny cavity in between, and by having literally a vacuum, you're knocking out almost all the cold transmission, not
Oh,
100%, but and you're doing it in a very thin cavity.
so it's a very retrofittable way to really
For some of
increase.
these places in particular, yeah. And so but the technology hasn't been easy to perfect for durability and such. And we did some of this very early on, 20 years ago, for a lady in Alaska, Japanese roots. But it lasted like a year or two. And so having seen too much of the troubles of that kind of stuff, we just chose to go in different directions. And but it is now being reinvented to a point in the United States. Bill Gates has a small investment in this of some sort, so I presume he has some idea what he's doing.
So yeah,
Adds a
yeah.
little credibility. But if they go, so if you take a high performance triple and have an R8, give or take, center glass, these guys can go all the way up to an R21
Oh wow.
by going with that back plus another cavity.
Yeah.
And right now, there's still work to be done on some parts of it in terms of really, it's kind of like a startup, if you will. But
Yeah.
being made in the U.S. now, rather than offshore somewhere with perhaps a little bit more credibility, definitely more durability. Uh, I can see it becoming a factor, and there are people who are very performance oriented, have called it a game changer in the ability to go from, like I said, from an 8 to a 21 is a pretty big jump.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's more than your effective R value of walls that are being
There you
built
go.
today.
Yeah.
So
No, so you asked what is exciting about that future. I do think that many of these kinds of things, people are, um, pushing for, in many cases, bigger and bigger glass areas. So they have views, they can enjoy the outdoors, bring the outdoors in, et cetera, et cetera. And um, I think the combination for us of having more tougher frames that can carry bigger glass, that respond to the glass and glass difference between them and our ability to incorporate higher performance glass so your overall system is stronger, bigger, better.
yeah, yeah.
That's a really good thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, you talked about Passive House and getting some Windows certified, and the general wisdom from a design perspective there is limit your glazing, limit your glazing. That's
Yeah,
always been the weak spot.
yeah.
But some of these advances sound like they're affording opportunities for efficient homes to get bigger glazing square footages and some other stuff like that.
So it's funny. I was just talking to one of, I don't know, a long time research type guy in Manitoba with housing and components, and I would say it's almost troubling as a Canadian manufacturer to see the amount of discussion about European products that are passive and such. And I think there's some misconceptions because they have created kind of this idea that a tilt and turn window from Germany somehow is massively better. And yet, yeah, exactly. And yet, when you look at it and you realize, well, wait a minute, the glass area has shrunk a lot because this inward opening window has a very heavy sash, a very heavy frame. You're not getting the same thing. And when you look at and say, wait a minute, I have a triple weather stripped German window and a triple weather stripped Canadian window that's made in Winnipeg.
Yeah,
Why would they be so drastically different in how airtight they are in cold weather, right?
yeah,
So there's quite a few of those kinds of things, and those passive windows from Germany are more commonly than not vinyl windows, which environmentally are not considered to be of the same caliber as pultruded fiberglass because you've got 60% of glass in inert material.
right.
So again, when we check all those boxes and say, wait a minute, in terms of us being able to deliver, a product that is durable, that is more environmentally friendly, that is more positive in an embodied carbon point of view, as well as delivering excellent performance. 25 years later, after my wife had the wisdom to push me in the right direction,
Yeah, you're coming around.
it's still the environment is catching up with that,
Yeah.
or
Yeah. Well, and I mean, you mentioned too the tilt and turns have that issue with wind pressure. That makes them looser.
what do you do with your window coverings?
Yeah.
A lot of people, they kind of get pulled into this, and then they realize, well, wait a minute, now I got to open it inwards, and what do I do with that? You
Yeah.
know? So
Yeah.
I think a lot of times people just need to be. I remember I was in Michigan last year, sometime in spring, I think, and I was chatting with this guy, and we're talking a little bit about the trade-offs involved. And suddenly, as he thought about it and thinking, wait a minute, so you're telling me your casement or awning outward opening window is triple weather stripped. It's very airtight. I don't have to worry about window coverings. Well, why am I looking at, tilt and turn? So I had the same conversation with somebody in Denver. They were kind of down that road, and then all of a sudden they realized, well, wait a minute, I hadn't thought about that. So
Yeah.
what do I do now? And obviously, it's not like the Europeans have their own much more refined approach to, wait a minute, what do I do with some of that or whatever, right? But
Yeah.
but here in North America, and even in Europe, you find many different patterns and designs. It's not like, the window systems are uniformly X, Y, or Z.
Right.
They're not.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and they're building for a different climate. I
Yeah.
mean, there are some places that are very similar to Winnipeg, but Europe is a big area with lots of different climates
And
involved.
very few parts of it are as cold as Winnipeg.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
example.
The extreme difference that we
Yeah.
get. Well, and we have a very dry cold, so not only do you have cold, but you also have very low humidity, and then you
Right.
go to very wet, hot summers.
Mm-hmm.
So no, it's a design fun experience to deal with. All right, Len. In wrapping up here, you talked a little bit in the beginning when you started this company. You talked a little bit about the breadth of experience that you had had.
Yeah.
So if you were going to give advice to young entrepreneurs or young manufacturers, or let's say someone starting their business, what do you
Yeah.
say to them?
Well, it's an interesting conversation. In our case, we're fortunate because we have two daughters. One of them is a lawyer with my wife and a mother-daughter law practice. So that's kind of half the enterprise, if you will, and all the wisdom. No, I'm just kidding. And our younger daughter has been with me, Ainsley, as you know, has been with us for 13 years or so. It's been really fun to watch her evolve and grow and become a really capable leader in so many different ways. And I don't think people appreciate entirely the complexity of, understanding all the bits and pieces that go in. How do you get that high performance product? How do you get your system to consistently create? How do you build a group approach to having continuous improvement embedded in your system? And, all of those things for her, for Ainsley, as she becomes the heir apparent and a person capable of operating a business of growing complexity has been kind of neat. But in addition to that, we do, in our case, periodically run into, young people or middle-aged people, whatever they may be, who decide to start their own business in doing window replacement. And it's been kind of fun to watch them evolve and, make their own little mistakes here and there, but figure out how to develop it, because again, we have this amazing business in Edmonton, Shield Windows and Doors. There was a couple of Dutch guys who looked like high school kids when they joined us, and they've grown it to where they've now got a team of, I don't know, 15, 20 people. They have their own warehouse and showroom and stuff, and the key leader manager, David, has been interesting to watch his sort of business instincts evolve and develop his marketing skills and building his team. And so that's definitely been an interesting part to watch. As I said early on, I think that sometimes people are probably a little bit too impatient to jump in. I don't know that I would discourage somebody, but in that context, because if you know what you want to do, and if you realize that you're going to have to pour a lot of time into this. We sometimes, as I am, a guy on the older side of the spectrum, we talk about some of the younger generation as really not that focused on work, and sometimes work is a four-letter word. I don't know. If you're really serious about, diving in and building your own business, you better be prepared to, make some sacrifices and
It's not all sunshine and rainbows. There's some hard,
but the benefits are definitely there.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and rewarding too, right?
Yeah.
And to see, you've now built this company over the past 25 years. There's a rewarding aspect to that's different than having helped Wilmar
So
establish.
another part that's really, I think I have found particularly interesting and positive is one of our suppliers from Fargo. This general manager runs a plant of about 450 people. I think he said he's got 37 different nationalities or cultures in his 37 out of 450.
Wow.
It's a big number. But the term he uses, which is different than, because I've run into a variety of business managers or owners who have no clue what's going on in their factory. They don't know people, they don't understand them. And he taught me the word teammate, not employee, teammate. And I was reading this again recently to talk about the culture of a business being so important that you can have all the fancy business plans in the world, but at the end of the day, that's way less important than if you have people, on the boat paddling in the same direction. And so I feel like that is another huge element. If I was teaching a course to people of what you want to do and how you want to succeed, if you're smart, you're going to put, some genuine effort into, treating people like you want to be treated, get to know who you're working with. And there's lots of little important terms in there. I think I've sometimes talked to our guys. The term win-win means something. If I'm trying to get all of us to kind of push a little harder in one direction, but if I don't compensate you for it or reward you for it, why are you going to? That's a win-lose, right? So I think from that point of view, people sometimes have, I shouldn't say sometimes, often, I take people on a walk through our factory. They quite often comment on the fact that they really notice that there is this connection between us. And
Yeah. Your teammates, between your teammates and
no,
you.
and it's
Yeah.
really important to me. I feel like when somebody needs something, and quite a few of our people are recent Canadians, um, they may be here for 3, 4, 5 years, and they go back to marry their girlfriend. Then they got to push paperwork through. A year or two later, they finally come. And it's really, really cool to watch some of that evolve.
Ah, that's neat. And the
Yeah,
relationships you get to build. Yeah,
yeah.
that's neat. Okay, I got two more. I'm going to start with the shameless self promotion one. So, where can people find Duxton? If someone's thinking, hey, I want to replace my navy blue or light blue windows in my
Yeah.
house, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Well, luckily, we now are spread out pretty much across Canada, from Ontario to BC or Vancouver, and into parts of the U.S. Gratefully, due to the fact that back in the late 90s, we were already a little bit educated about the internet and websites. We very early on did create a website. And due to some work by Ainsley, my daughter, and an ongoing basis, we have a pretty powerful website. There's a lot of information on there.
Yeah.
Everything from complex fiberglass wood grain doors to soup to nuts.
Yeah.
And it has an inquiry point and a certain amount of information on where to find our offices and dealers. So, but we routinely take that through to people that are most likely to follow up.
Yep. And now you do production, but you have connections who would do the swapping out of windows if someone wanted a living room window redone or something like that?
Yeah, no, we've from the beginning pretty much made the choice that um, the work of doing the actual window replacement work, for example, if you say, hey, I'm in a home, the windows are 20, 30, whatever years old, and you want to do some or all of them, it's really not our expertise. We've chosen to try and be excellent at manufacturing the products. We have designed various details of them that are very much designed for that. And in the meantime, we've developed almost franchise-like a group of replacement window contractors as Prairie Windows in Winnipeg, York in Saskatoon, Shield in Edmonton, West Source in Regina, et cetera, et cetera. So those folks are basically family-owned and operated businesses with typically a great deal of experience in knowing how to assess a window situation and what to do to replace them. And they, for the most part, are dedicated Duxton people, so they have developed really deep knowledge of our products and options. And we carefully develop and cultivate those guys to make sure that they reflect kind of who we are.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I mean, I've noticed you have a lot of different ways to solve a lot of different problems. You've come across a lot in your time. Final thought here: if you had to sum up what makes a great window in one sentence, if you had to sum up all the boxes that it checks off, what would your sentence be?
Well, that's a little bit tricky. I couldn't just say Duxton, probably.
The
But
one word.
no, I think then we've got to be careful how I phrase this. But I don't. Maybe people don't give enough thought to what that is, and not just price, but what are they looking for? And I would say that what we try to do with our project managers, salespeople, and our dealer distributors is, you talk about ask more questions than, listen more than trying to sell something, because we are very much oriented towards helping people solve their problems and what they want. So this is way more than one sentence, of course, but it's either a fit or it's not a fit. And in our case, we try to create products that are higher quality, more durable, that perform to a greater degree in our environment. And for people that are looking for that kind of a feature, we're a great fit. And as I said before, when we think of the last 25 years, that the marketplace has evolved in our expectation that some of that was going to come. So we targeted ourselves to be in a world that was more interested in performance and durability.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. The idea that a good window is the one that solves your problems, right? Every customer will come with a different set of problems.
Absolutely, yeah.
And Duxton isn't for everyone, and that's fine. And hopefully they find their window that will solve their problem for them.
And I don't think it means it has to be wealth. There are people that are, perhaps a fairly small home or something, but they want an excellent quality product. And so it's not like the cost is an overwhelming issue. It's more a case of what do people want.
Right.
And,
is it worth the comfort? Is it worth like the durability? Durability of color, right? Even you talked a little bit about vinyl colors. Is it worth low maintenance? You can put wood in, but you got to maintain. So there's a few kind of boxes it has to check for everyone.
Well, we create product options where they have a really nice wood jam extension, which can match up with a really nice wood casing detail. And contrary to the white world that has existed for so long, there is a little bit of a resurgence towards a more natural wood type finish interior. So we have some great options that way that, is, I don't know, a more durable, appealing side to things. So it's so many other things than that, right? I think part of it is just being sensitive to the marketplace and trying to adapt and fit those needs.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Al. Thanks for taking time. This was fun.
Thank you.
We'll have to do this again sometime, and I'll remember your New Zealand white wine.
Stone Lee, the best white wine in the world.
All right, Stone Lee.
Take care.
Free advice for everyone.